Hey, what's up guys? Welcome back to another video on the Spigot series. In this video I'll be teaching you guys how to use ORM Lite, which is a Java library that allows you to interact with your SQL databases really easily using object relational mapping. So like I said before, we're going to be using something called ORM Lite. I'll have a link for this in the description below. And this is a very popular Java library that you can import into your project, which makes your life way easier, okay? So hopefully you've seen my other database videos where I show you guys how to connect to a MySQL database or a SQLite database inside of your Minecraft plugins. And the way we do that within the code is by using something called JDBC, the Java Database Connectivity API, which is directly built into Java. But it's very low level compared to what other things you could be doing. And a very popular technique to make your life way easier is something called ORM, or Object Relational Mapping. And Object Relational Mapping is actually just what it sounds like. It's basically taking your Java objects and making them interact with your database. And that's a very high level, simple explanation for what it really does, okay? It's a little more complex than that. But basically we can have our Java classes that represent, chunks of data, and that can be automatically converted into SQL database tables for us. And then on top of that, we can use the library to then, query stuff on that table. We can update stuff on that table, all that just using Java objects rather than having to write our own SQL statements, right? And that's really popular because writing your own SQL statements can be quite cumbersome. It can take time, and you can also make mistakes along the way. So having something that does all the heavy lifting for you behind the scenes is really amazing. So this is exactly one of those packages that allow you to do that. It's a very popular one. It's called ORM Lite, similar to SQLite in the sense that it's lightweight, but they are different things. So this is something that you could really just import into your application really easily, just using the Maven dependency import thingy, and it allows you to integrate with a bunch of different databases like MySQL, Postgres, however you say that, Postgres, Microsoft SQL Server, H2, Derby, HSQLDB, and SQLite. So we're going to be using SQLite, but it doesn't really matter because you can use all of these here, right? So basically we don't have to write any more SQL code ourselves. We can rely on this to do all of that for us. And before we get started, I just want to show you guys this website real quick because this has great documentation. So you can click these links here to see more. So get started. It'll tell you how to set up your application to, hook up with your database using this library and all that. So pretty good stuff. Make sure you check it out. Again, there's a link in the description below. So if we just look here, we can see that we have this account class, and then we have this annotation upon it called database table, and we can specify the table name as well. And then we have these fields here, so name and password, and these are database fields as you can see, because that's how they're annotated. This one happens to be the ID, and we can see that it also has stuff like can be null. So instead of specifying all of this with your SQL statements when you create the table, this will automatically take this class for you and create a table automatically for you and allow you to query based off that table. So yeah, hopefully you're excited for this. Let's go ahead and jump into the code and see how we can do that. Okay, so if you saw the last episode, I made a plugin that hooks up to an SQLite database. And so I pretty much coded just an example plugin that allows you to basically have a table that stores the amount of points that a player has, and it has some basic stuff like adding new players, seeing if a player exists already, updating the player points, getting the player points, some basic CRUD functionality, but not all of it. Doesn't have anything for deleting and stuff like that. But if you're not familiar with the last episode and you didn't watch this one, this is basically all it does. It does all those basic things. But up here you can see that when we create the class, it's going to create a new connection to the database using the driver, and then it's going to then create the table if it does not already exist using SQL. And this is the part that we're going to be sort of getting rid of because ORM Lite is going to do it all for us, which is awesome. And now we also have these commands here. So get points and set points. Get points will, get the amount of points that you have or someone else has just by accessing the database class that we created and that I just showed you. And then we have set points, which will just, this is basically an admin command that allows you to set the points for a player manually. Pretty simple. And then, yeah, so we have two listeners as well. So whenever someone joins the server, if this is their first time joining, they will be added to the database table. And then we also have the mob kill listener. So whenever a mob dies, we check to see if a player killed the mob. If they did, we're going to, get their current points, increase that by a random amount, and then update them in the database. And that's pretty much it for this plugin. That's all we got. So now we're going to take this and basically modify it, refactor it so that it works with ORM Lite, and we're going to see how much less of a pain it is to work with our database code, okay? Hopefully that makes sense. So the first thing that we want to do is, of course, import the dependency. So here's where you can find the Maven dependency. So I'll have a link for this in the description below. But you can go here and click the latest one, and then just go ahead and copy this dependency down here. Go back to your project, go to your pom.xml, and put it right there below the SQLite driver if you want to. And boom, there we go. So now we should have that available within our application now. So if we go back to points database, we can start to modify this to work with ORM Lite. The first thing that we're going to do though is actually create a new class. So inside of the database package, we're going to create a new package called entities. And these are simply going to be objects or classes rather that sort of represent the data within our database. In this case, it's going to be the tables, because ORM Lite is going to take those classes and map them into tables for us automatically, like I said before. So this class that we're going to create is going to be called player points, because we want to have a player points table, right? So player points, and then before we specify that our table is going to have a UUID, a username, and the amount of points. So let's go ahead and add this to this class here. So we're going to have private string UUID, private string username, and then private integer points. So very, very simple example here, of course. And then now what we want to do is annotate this as we saw before so that the library knows what to do. So at the very top here above class, we want to annotate it as a database table. And now we can, inside of these parentheses here, specify the table name. So table name is going to be equal to, and the convention for SQL tables is usually going to be lowercase and also separated by underscores. So I guess that's called snake case if I remember correctly. So in this case, we should call it player points. So now whenever it tries to map the player points class into a table, this will be the name of the table that it creates for us, okay? And then we're going to do database field. And so this field is going to be, first of all, an ID of true. But if you do Control P here, you can see all the different, attributes that you can specify in the annotation. There's a lot because, SQL databases are pretty complex, but a lot of them are pretty self-explanatory. If you've worked with databases before, you may just have to Google some of these if you're not familiar with them or you're trying to do something specific. For example, you can specify it as a foreign key if you want to. A foreign key is just a way of linking one table to another. You can specify something, whether something can be null or not, because that's very important for us. So, some columns should not be null, but this one should be enough. It's just going to mark this specific field here or column as a primary key or the ID for the table, okay? But one more thing actually as an example, if, something that you commonly do whenever you have a table is you have the ID be auto-generated. So something that you could do if you wanted that is just to set generated ID to true, and this should generate the ID for you. But in this case, we want the ID to be the UUID of the player, which is just going to be set by us within the plugin code because, that's something that we get from Bukkit, right? Anyway, we have that one now, so we're going to go ahead and annotate username. So database field can be null to false, so that's username, because that should never be null. That should always have a value. Same thing for this one as well. So database field points, that should be false, but also it should have a default value of 0. So if we don't specify the amount of points, that's going to create an issue because it cannot be null, right? But at the same time, it should have a default value, so it should just put 0 instead. And one thing is that you need to actually provide it as a string, even though it's going to be an integer, you have to provide it as a string within the annotation, okay? And there we go. So this is our basic setup for this table that we want to create. Now what we want to do though is actually create a constructor for this class. So we can do code, generate constructor, and it needs to be a no args constructor. So do select none. And there we go. This is our no args constructor. This is required by the library to be able to do, whatever it needs to do with your class, okay? And then the next thing we want to do is have our basic getters and setters for this class so that we can access and set the values just like we would normally with any other class. So we're going to do generate, getter and setter. Select all of these by holding Control, click OK, and there we go. Now we have all of our getters and setters. Perfect. So now we have everything we need in this class to represent the data that we're going to be storing in our plugin and in our database. So now we need to go back to our database class and set that up though. So we're going to get rid of this connection because we don't need that anymore. That's just for JDBC. We're going to do private final DAO. That stands for document access object. I'll explain that in a second. And so for this one, you need to specify the class that you're going to be adding to this. So we're going to do player points, the one we just created, and then the second one's just going to be the data type of the primary key. So this, in this case, is going to be a string for the UUID. Okay, there we go. And then after that, we want to just give it a name. So player points DAO. So usually it's just the table name and then DAO on the end of it. And now we can get rid of all this. We do not need that anymore. And we're going to create a new connection source. Connection source is equal to new JDBC connection source. But this is not from JDBC, it's from ORM Lite. And then here we're just going to add the path again like we had before. So this will basically tell ORM Lite where it can find our database and connect to it. So we're going to do JDBC SQLite plus and then the path. There we go. And then now that should establish a connection to the database for us automatically, hopefully if nothing goes wrong. But now we can actually go ahead and create the table. So the way we're going to do that is by doing table utils dot create table. And you can see that there's a bunch of methods here, but we want to do create table if not exists. And here we want to specify the connection source along with the class that we want to create a table for. So in this case, we want to create a class for player points. And it's asking for our class, so we're going to do playerPoints.class, okay? And then after that, we want to finish setting up our playerPoints DAO, our data access object. So we want to do playerPoints DAO is equal to DAO manager dot create DAO connection source, and then playerPoints class, same as before. There we go. So now we should have a DAO created. And so what the heck is a DAO? Like I said before, DAO stands for data access object, and within the context of a object relational mapping library, this is simply an object that you can use to do stuff to the database based on your Java objects. So what that means is that we know that the player points DAO that we just created is a interaction between the player points class and our actual database, except that the database part of things is hidden behind the scenes. So this gives us basic CRUD functionality, meaning that we can create new player points objects, we can update player points objects, we can delete player points objects, we can do all that stuff, right? So this gives us all the basic, database functionality for our player points class without us having to write a single amount of SQL code, okay? So this is simply just going to be the object that we use to interact with the player points table. In simple terms is what that means, okay? So hopefully that makes sense. Now we can also delete the close connection method. We don't need that anymore because it's going to be handled automatically for us. All right, so let's get started transforming these methods here. So instead of directly using JDBC, we're going to be using the DAO and using ORM Lite, okay? So we can just go ahead and get rid of this, or we'll just comment it out so you can see the difference directly. So whenever we get a new player, normally we would just insert that into the database directly using a SQL statement, but now we can actually just create a player points object. So player points is equal to new player points. If you want to, you could define a constructor for that, but I'm just going to set the values manually. So we can do player points dot set UUID, and then p.getUniqueID dot toString, and now we'll set the username as well. So player points dot set username p dot get display name. So now that we have this player points object, we can go ahead and put it into the database into our player points table by simply doing player points DAO dot. And here you can see you have all these different methods here that are just automatically provided to you, so you can do a lot of complex things without having to write any SQL code yourself. So we can delete by ID, we can create, we can delete in other ways, we can do delete IDs, let's scroll down here a little bit, we can do an iterator to loop through some values, we can query with a bunch of different methods, what else? We can roll back, that's another thing for transactions, which I will cover in a separate video. But yeah, as you can see here, you have a lot of different methods that you can use with your DAO to do stuff to the player points table. And the one that we're going to do now is create. And now all we have to do to create the player points row in the table is either provide an object or a collection of objects. And so we're just going to provide player points. There we go. So that alone will create it within the table. And then we could also set the points if we want to. But as we saw before, it's a default value of 0, so we don't have to, okay? So that's great. So this in itself is not too complex, it's not too hard to do, except for the fact that you have to write your own SQL, and that can be both time consuming, so you don't have to memorize stuff, and also it's prone to errors as well. So with this, it's already coded for you, you can just simply call the methods and it does it for you. Object-oriented programming, which is great. And look how beautiful that looks compared to, using JDBC directly. It looks awesome. So now let's go ahead and do this one, the player exists method. So to convert this one, it's actually really, really easy. So we're simply seeing if a player exists by their unique ID, right? Because that's the primary key. So all we have to do is to return player points DAO dot ID exists. So it's going to check to see if a row in the table exists by the primary key or the ID. So this is simply going to be player.getUniqueID.toString, and that should return true or false if it's present or not. Pretty simple, right? That's all you have to do, just that one line. Awesome. Now let's go ahead and do update. So this one we have to take a player that already exists, hopefully, and then also update their amount of points, and the points are provided. So the first thing that we have to do is get their player points currently that they have, right? So player points is equal to player points DAO dot query for ID. So this will simply see if it can find a player points row in the table given the primary key. So query for ID player.getUniqueID.toString. So this will return a player points object if it can find one with the ID. If not, it will be null. So we're going to do if player points, the one that was found, is not equal to null. So if it's not equal to null, we can continue doing what we wanted to do. So what we want to do is do player points dot set points. And then after that, to actually update it within the database, all you have to do is again do player points DAO dot update, and then just pass in the object that you want to update it. So it's automatically going to detect the ID on that object and then update it for you within the table. You don't have to tell it how to update it based on what column and all that fun stuff, okay? It's going to do it for you, which is great. So this is a way more simplified statement versus what we had before, which is way more complex, okay? Pretty cool, right? And so now we have our getPlayerPoints method. This one is pretty simple in the sense that it just tries to find a player points like it is up here, and then if it finds one, it's just going to return the amount of points that was found, otherwise 0. And we're just going to make a quick modification to this. You can keep it how it is if you want to, meaning that it can return the amount of points directly, but I'm just going to change it so that it actually returns the player points object, because in some circumstances it may be useful to have the entire object rather than just the amount of points, okay? And I'm just going to copy this actually and just return this directly. So now it's way more simplified. It just simply returns the player points object. So player points is now the return type. And the cool thing about actually returning this instead of the amount of points is that now we can better handle if it can't find a player points object within the table, right? And the benefit of having it return the player points object directly instead of the amount of points is that it's going to return null if it can't find it, right? So we can handle that wherever this method is called. You know, sometimes you may want to handle things differently depending on what, you know, where you're at in the context of what you're programming, right? So anyway, I hope that makes sense. So as you can see, this created 3 problems because we've changed the return type of the method. So we'll just, you know, address that in a second. But I'm just going to go ahead and make another method just to illustrate this to you. So public void delete player points, or just delete player rather, makes more sense, I think. So this one's going to be accepting a player that we want to delete from the table for some reason. And so to delete, we just have to do what we've been doing. So player points DAO.delete by ID player to dot get unique ID dot toString. So there we go. And then now we need to make sure that we handle the exception. So we're just going to add it to the method signature though, okay? And so the reason I wanted to put this one here is just so that you can see how to do deletions, because now we have, you know, pretty basic CRUD functionality. We can create, we can update, we can read right here, and then we can also delete now. So what you would usually do now is just rename this class to something like points service rather than the points database. That's really up to you. People will come up with different names for how they want to do things, but a very common design pattern is that you'll have a class for each of your DAOs, and so you would name it based on, you know, what the DAO is about. So if it's the player points DAO, of course you would have it as the points the player points service, right? If it's the chicken wing DAO, you would have it as the chicken wing service. So that would handle anything related to querying the database for chicken wing stuff, or in this case, point stuff. So anytime you want to interact with the database related to a player's points, you know to go to the points service, right? So I'm just going to go ahead and rename this to points service to just illustrate that fact. And the name doesn't really matter, it's just how you want to design things. That's just a common way of naming it, okay? There we go. So this now should be refactored everywhere to point service. All right, so now that we refactored our service class here to work with ORM Lite rather than working with JDBC directly, as you can see, it's much more concise, much more, just even better to look at. It's great, right? It does a lot of the heavy lifting for you and makes your job way easier. So now what we're going to do is go to our commands and everywhere within the application, or rather the plugin that is using this service, and make sure that it's using, you know, the updated code, because I changed a few things, right? So let's go to get points, and for get points, we just want to make a short little modification here. As we can see, we're doing get player points, and now this returns a player points object instead of an amount of points. So we just want to modify this so that's player points player points is equal to that. And then we want to check to see if it's null or not, because if it's null, that's that's an option. If it's null, that means it can't be found. So this is checking to see if it's null or not. And then if it is null, what we want to do is go ahead and create a new one in the database so that, if for some reason this player doesn't have a player points entry in the table, right? So we want to just go ahead and create one for them on the fly. So player points is equal to pointy plugin dot get points database, which should be called get points service. I have to rename that, dot create or add player. So we're going to pass in P now. So this will on the fly add the player to the table, and then it's just complaining because it's not returning a new one, and we want to go ahead and make it so that it returns the one that was just created, right? So we'll go to the implementation and just change it, the return type, to player points. And this is something very common you'll see with services and just database stuff in general. Whenever you create a new record in the database, or the table rather, you want to return the new record, because a lot of the time it's going to automatically put the ID for you. In this case, the ID is just going to be set by us, but in many cases the ID is going to be generated by the database directly. So you want to go ahead and return the thing that was just created, because then you could use the ID for whatever you want to do next, okay? And all we have to do is actually just do return player points. Okay, so the way that this works is when it takes this object here and creates it in the table, it's actually going to modify the object directly. You don't have to, take whatever is returned from this and then set it and all that fun stuff. It actually is just going to modify the object directly using, magic. And then you can take that object and just return it, because now the ID, if it was generated, is now going to be automatically populated for you. So now if we just go back here to get points, the get points command, we can now use that newly returned player points object, store it here in this variable, and now we can just use it as if nothing happened by doing player points dot get points. There we go. So again, just to recap, this is checking to see if a player if the player who ran the command is running it for themselves to see how many points they have. If they are, we're going to go ahead and grab the player points object from the table based on that player that we have. If it doesn't exist for some reason, we're just going to set the value by creating it on the fly, and then we're going to use it, send the message as we were going to do originally anyway, okay? Hopefully that makes sense. And so we're going to do the exact same thing down here. There we go, okay? The set points command here is good. We don't need to really touch this one. Nothing was changed. The mob kill listener, however, is the thing that needs to be changed now. So here we just need to do pretty much the same thing we just did a second ago. It's still here expecting a amount of points to be returned, but it's not going to return that. It's going to return a player points object. So we just need to make the same modification that we just did. Okay, there we go. So now down here we can do, instead of points is being incremented by this value, we can do player points dot set points player points dot get points plus new points. And you can of course create a method called add points to automatically do this, so you don't have to get it and add it like that, but you get the point. So now we're just adding the points a different way inside of the object this time. And then now down here where we provide the points, we can simply do player points dot get points. Alright, so now the last thing we need to change is in the main plugin class here. We just need to remove this onDisable method because it's automatically going to close the connection when it needs to, so we don't really need that anymore. And then everything else here can pretty much stay the same. We're still going to be instantiating our points service and then providing the path to the database file. That's all going to work the same, okay? And then if it doesn't work, it's just going to disable the plugin. And then, yeah, pretty simple. And that's pretty much it. So now let's go ahead and test it out on the server to see if it works. Alright, so if we look at the console here, it looks like everything is working. It says enabling pointy, and then it says table utils creating table player points. And then it even tells you the actual code that it ran, which is pretty cool as well. We can see that the folder was created, which is awesome. So we can open that up and see the database file. So that is great. Now let's go ahead and connect to it using this here. All right, so let's take a look at that table. And we can see here that we have the UUID, username, and points columns. Great. All right, I'm on the server now. So I just need to, let's first check our amount of points that we currently have. It says I have 0 points. Great. Now I'm going to go ahead and kill something so that I can hopefully get some new points. Alright, so it says plus 6 points, so I should have earned 6 points from killing that zombie pigment. So if I do /points, it says I have 6 points. Perfect. Let's go ahead and try again. Now I should have gotten 10 points on top of that, so I should have 16, and I do. Perfect. Now if we just look in the database, we can verify that. Boom, there we go. So we have our UUID, our username, and then the amount of points that we have. So everything is working perfectly. We can also test the set points command. So So set it to really high. So now if we do /points, we have 100,000 points. There we go. So as you can see, everything's working perfectly. The only difference now is that we're using ORM Lite, which is a very, very awesome library that makes your job way easier. So now in the future, when you make your plugins and you want to connect to the database, you can use ORM Lite and, you know, get started way faster, because now you don't have to worry about writing the queries all yourself and all that fun stuff, okay? If you guys want to see more videos on how to work with databases with your plugins and how to do more complex things, then just let me know. I will make more videos on it. So yeah, thanks for watching, everybody. Alright, so that's it for this video. Thanks for watching. In the description below, I'll leave a link to the code for this episode so you can check it out. You can bookmark it, come back to it later. If you forget any concepts or you just want to review the concepts I taught in this video, I'll mark everything up with comments so you can come back and read the code without having to rewatch the video, although your reviews are greatly appreciated. So yeah, I'll leave a link for that in the description below, so make sure to check it out. And another thing is I'll leave a link to our Discord server. It's a big community for programmers. You can ask for help on your programming projects if you're stuck on something, or maybe you can get some new friends. If you don't have any friends, there's lots of people here. It's growing really fast. You can find lots of people who are passionate about the same things as you. For example, if you like Minecraft Spigot development, you can find lots of people who like that. If you like C++, if you like Java, if you like web development, it's a really, really big programming community. So feel free to join. There's a link for that in the description below. And the last thing I want to tell you is that if you want to support this channel, you can click the join button below this video, and you can join this channel as a member for as low as 99 cents a month, and you can cancel at any time. You get some cool perks like early access to all of my new videos, a cool rank on my Discord server like you see right here on the side, YouTube members, and also you get to see yourself on the screen like you see right now. So if that sounds cool to you, feel free to join. If you don't want to, that's fine. If you can't, that's okay too. I really just appreciate you watching the video anyway. And thank you. Thanks a lot. And that's it. So if you like this video, leave a like. If you want to see more, subscribe. And peace.